Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Are You a Robot? I'm Demetrios Brinkman, your host, and today we are joined by none other than Meeri.
Yeah, my name is Meeri Haataja. Great to be here. And I'm CEO and founder of a company called Shoutout. We founded Shoutout 3 years ago, and really our focus is on helping companies and public organizations putting in place systematic AI governance, transparency, and communication. We do that by developing and providing technology platform that helps organizations doing this, and then obviously supporting organizations via consulting as well.
Before we jump into the full episode, I want to quickly update you on what we are doing here at Are You a Robot? This is a series where we aim to tackle some of the greatest challenges around AI and related technologies. And the way that we're doing that is by gathering some of the best and brightest minds in their respective fields so they can come on here and talk with myself about what it is exactly that they're doing, how they see the current state of affairs, and if there are any best practices that we can take with us as we move forward in this world where AI becomes more and more ubiquitous. I want to mention that we have a community built so that if you like anything that you are hearing, you can join us on Slack where we keep the conversations going. I encourage you to jump in there, introduce yourself, let us know what you're working on, and join the conversation. Last but not least, I cannot give enough thanks to our sponsor. This show is powered by EthicsGrade. If you do not know what EthicsGrade is up to, they're an ESG ratings company. And just a side note, in case you don't know what ESG is, that is where a company is studying the non financial effects that other companies have in society. So, EthicsGrade, what they're doing is they are going around and they are benchmarking or they are giving scorecards to all of the different companies that we know, love, or distrust, do not love, wherever they fall on that spectrum. EthicsGrade has given them a scorecard on their different aspects of how they rate within data protection or their data governance structures in their companies, within the AI ethics programs that these companies have. There's 6 different categories that EthicsGrade has rated each company on, and I highly encourage you to go check out some of the scorecards that EthicsGrade has so kindly put together for us, and it's totally free. You can go download the scorecard now. You can go and compare some of your favorite or least favorite companies, see how Amazon stacks up against Alibaba or Microsoft against Apple, and really look at what these companies are doing and if they are walking the talk. I think that is the most fascinating thing for me. I get to go and peep inside if what these companies are saying they're doing, they are actually doing. So, again, that's EthicsGrade. You can check it out, ethicsgrade.io, or find the link below in the description. Without further ado, let's jump into the conversation with Meeri. Are you a robot? All right, Meeri, it is a pleasure to have you on here. I thank you for joining us to talk about responsible AI and trustworthy AI. I really want to dive in deep to some of these themes. And right from the get go, I want to ask you about responsible AI and what exactly that looks like when it's done well.
Oh, that's such a large question. I've just discussed today with my clients on responsible AI theme, and everyone says that it's huge. It's so difficult to get grasp up of that whole entity. So I don't know how well I'm able to define it for you. I'm looking into it most importantly from the governance perspective. So sort of trying to put together figure out ways that companies can use in order to help them do better decisions or make sure that they are doing have everything that is needed to do good decisions regarding, for example, ethical questions related to how you use AI, management of risks, and so forth. But yeah, those are means for supporting, creating that kind of environment where we are creating responsible or trustworthy AI systems that are considered as ethical and legal and reliable. So yeah, maybe maybe that's a perspective to it. Then we could discuss, obviously, for example, EU Commission has done a good, or their expert group has done good work in defining what is trustworthy, which is very close to this responsible AI definition. And we could say that it must be lawful, it must be ethical, and technically reliable, and what kind of requirements we have to set for the organizations and people developing these services in order to meet that target. Yeah, there are so many perspectives to that. Yeah.
And for you, so you're mainly looking at the trustworthy side. I know the work that you're doing is within trying to make sure that companies and governments, for that matter, are really taking this trustworthy approach. Can you explain what exactly that means?
Yeah, so first of all, I guess it's for many organizations, it's recognition that that our AI, our technology and AI that we develop, it actually has influence to how yeah, it has influence to the people that are using or the processes that where we take into use this kind of services. So many companies start this work by looking into values of the organization, the value system where the organization is operating, and the industry services that we're creating, and what is important for us from value perspective over there, and then sort of crystallizing for themselves what is important from the value perspective, what kind of services, products we want to develop, and that is sort of a guiding. Those are the guiding principles that help us sort of narrow down what kind of technology we want to develop, and what are the sort of things that we don't want to be involved in. Then, sort of building on that, then there are many more practical aspects related to this one. When talking about AI governance, we typically make sure that, for example, we consider different kinds of risks that are related to that system, development, use of that system, and then make sure that we understand on its uh, sort of like comprehensively the different kinds of impacts, not only the primary targeted impacts of that system, but also uh, side effects and different kinds of influences that the system and the use of it has in its environment. And that is really super important part of the process. And a lot about this AI governance related work is actually um, surrounded around understanding what are the risks related to the system that we're developing, and what are the good mitigation methods then in addressing those risks.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I was actually going to ask you to zoom in on that a little bit more, and ways that we can properly address those risks, ways that we can see. And I asked someone what their biggest blind spot right now is in their life, and they said, well, the hard part about blind spots is we don't realize they're blind spots, right? So
Mm.
this really applies, I think, when we are trying to mitigate the risks of AI and we think that we've thought everything through, but really there are blind spots that we haven't looked at and we just are clearly missing them. So how can we do that better?
Yeah, yeah. I fully agree with you. That's one of the biggest things in the and reasons also for such a need for this discipline in this area, that we've recognized that there are so many blind spots when we develop this kind of systems, that we need this the whole discipline to support us, bringing those into light and looking into those. I think on average we have relatively low maturity in systematic risk management in the development of this kind of systems. Uh, Obviously, it totally depends on the industry and sort of how, for example, regulated the industry is and how established ways of workings there are already for risk management. So that's really varies. But for many organizations, even the idea that we actually go through risk analysis in the process of developing new technologies, new AI systems, is relatively new concept. And already by that, basically having that exercise of people who are developing the system actually sitting down together and thinking about the different aspects of the system, what kind of data we are using, are there some risks related to that one, how we are, what kind of models we are building, who are the users and what are the use contexts, and what are the different kinds of risks related to the use of this system, documenting those risks and then understanding what is the scale of the risk and potential impacts, potential harm, and then identifying, narrowing down what are really the core important risks that we should focus and should start mitigating in different ways. So I think that's already a huge thing. And if we look at the, for example, suggested regulation by EU on AI, it also has expectations for this kind of risk management system, that you systematically identify what are the risks related to, and then have a systematic mitigation for addressing those risks. So it's not rocket science, but it's very efficient in basically opening your thinking around the influence. Then there are obviously, like, as you said, and especially if we are developing these systems in homogeneous teams where we have relatively similar worldview and perspective into that, then there are obviously important ways, like, for example, that you, in that risk management or risk analysis process, you also engage with the people that you are planning to give this system to be used, or like, other types of stakeholders, and ask what are their thoughts, what kind of risks they see related to that one. That is one good way that I always try to encourage my customers to actually see it as an opportunity to open your plans up and discuss, consult people from outside the team about those risks as well.
So, one thing that you just mentioned, and I always find very fascinating when it comes to AI, because it is such a diverse field. There are so many technical people that are working on the different products that are coming out, different data products. Then you have all of the different business stakeholders. And you have, when we're talking about ethics, you have the legal stakeholders. And so you mentioned stakeholder engagement. Who are these stakeholders in your mind that need to be involved in this process?
Yeah, very, very good question. Naturally, there is the technical development team. They and I'm also really enthusiastic about helping the technical teams to sort of upskill themselves in looking into these areas, and sort of I think that's very important. Um, Privacy team, legal team, obviously key stakeholders. Often I am discussing with our customers about how can we extend or use the existing data protection impact assessment processes and policies for covering the new kinds of AI-related risks, for example. So I fully support that. I think it totally makes sense if you have established processes around privacy, data protection, cybersecurity to use the same processes for that one. Often, I've been saying that one of the most important task when I help customers is to make friends between, or help the data science teams become friends with their own organization's privacy teams, and risk management teams. So I think there's a lot to do in that kind of working relation in many organizations between with the data science and the privacy teams. But then obviously it depends on the use case what we are developing. Often the business owners are in the business unit, who is sort of internal customer for this system. I think there is clearly need for those internal stakeholders, business stakeholders, to have more transparency into the AI systems that are supporting their businesses. So that's also there are more and more expectations for more explainability, transparency internally to support that accountability that often business stakeholders have for those systems. So already from within the organization, we have so many different stakeholders that should come together and have means for working together around these ones. Then I'm also really supportive for that kind of idea that we go outside the organization, find different ways for engaging with the external stakeholders as well. So whoever if you're developing an education related system, who are the students that or teachers who might be using the system, I encourage to discuss with them also about these questions and their potential concerns. So, or if you are developing people analytics systems, go to the employees who would be analyzed based on your AI. Maybe engage with labor unions for getting their say on that topic and so forth. So we always need to really think it in the context of the use case, and hopefully look also outside the organization and the immediate people who already naturally are part of the process.
Can you talk to us about the friendship building that you do between the teams, such as the data scientists and the privacy? Because I know some data scientists that I talk to, or machine learning engineers for that matter, privacy or legal is just there to rain on their parade. And
Yeah.
it is very hard to get them to understand the point of view of privacy. I think they know that in a way, yes, we need this because it is important for the company. We don't want to have a scandal, or we don't want to have problems in the long run. But what are the steps you take to make sure that these two teams are a cohesive unit as opposed to two siloed teams that are working against each other?
Yeah. I don't know, is there any secret sauce? I think it's mostly about well, typically, and now I'm based, really speaking of my experience and not having any theory behind this one, but based on my experience, how I've been working with customers on this one. It's obviously first thing is to understand the current policies and processes that the privacy team, for example, has in place. So often there are good ways of working. Many times they are not fully deployed or known by everyone who should know them. So first is really to understand that what kind of services and ways of workings, methodologies there already exist, so that we we can make full use of those and then build on that one. So that's first thing, acknowledging the work that has been done already by the lawyers, and then I think really important, and what is really now gaining traction via this AI, the rise of AI ethics and responsible AI, not only privacy, is that when people start to notice that there are risks related to these systems, and we really have the responsibility over managing, seeing those risks and managing those risks and so forth. So there starts to be this, accountability that, okay, we need to take this seriously, and we need to, in a way or another, come up with good ways of doing what is needed in this case. So when you are in that position, then you are actually in a mode of like looking for good solutions for that one, and then also your own privacy team and the work that they have been doing in this area start to look something that actually can provide solutions to you, can provide support for the need that you recognize that you have. So this whole development of that we are expanding our thinking from data protection to wider risk and fundamental rights related risks and so forth in the area of responsible AI, that makes the challenge and the issue bigger, and then need also in the data science team side, the need bigger for good tangible solutions for that one. So and then I think it's most importantly sitting down together, seeing that we have a common target. We all want to do good risk management, good governance for what we are developing. We want to do that in an efficient way, and so forth. Yeah, I think it typically comes naturally when you start to build it from that perspective, that we actually want to solve a true problem. And we are not doing things for governance. We are actually doing something that we find is important enough to put this effort and find solutions.
Yeah, and I think we can come back to this point too later on when we talk about the tool you're creating, because there are interesting parallels here with how you just need to define the common goal and then get both teams on the same page and help them communicate and recognize that they're not working against each other, or one is not trying to put the brakes on the other. Before we do that, you also mentioned before how you are a big proponent of upskilling engineers into the world of ethics and responsible AI. And I think what I wanted to know, in your experience, how have you seen engineers take to that? Because I was just talking to a friend, Dave, who runs an engineering conference around ML ops. And he said he is always fighting to put in ethical AI talks in the conference because he feels that it is needed and it is very important. And he says they are the lowest attended talks in the conference. And so I'm wondering, how do you see that? Like, how have you seen success with engineers upskilling and recognizing the greater value in learning about some of these different issues that aren't just coding issues?
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I started to think that I have a privilege to work with those organizations who are doing something concrete in this area. So probably I'm a little bit biased from that perspective, that companies where people don't see any value of this kind of work, then they probably don't collaborate much with organization like mine or others in this area. So this is a little bit biased from that perspective. But what is my experience, that in general, I think data scientists on average see that they know the system that they are developing. They also know the limitations of those systems. So in general, I think there is a very good ground, common understanding that um, the systems that we develop are not perfect. There are limitations, and it is important to know those limitations and work around these topics. But what I've found is it's also super important to have those sort of the ones who are pioneers, or who really find this as really important topic, and they want to be the drivers within the data science team to take a key role in sort of taking the community into these topics and keeping the flag up for these topics. So these kind of individuals, and typically you can actually find those when you bring these topics on table, that okay, these are the things that we want to start working on. I would say that it's typically very relatively easy to find volunteers who want to be sort of drivers within the organization and want to be planning how do we address this and so forth. And these are very important individuals. Like in any other change management work, there needs to be sort of the first group of people who sees the light and sort of has a key role in mediating between the new theme and the how the organization has got used to work, and then figuring out the way. So I really think we need to make sure that the data science community has they take this as their own problem, and sort of try to find ways how it's not that way that people from outside come and criticize the work that you are doing, but sort of encourage it to be good solutions and interest for this area be born inside the community as well.
So let's change gears for a moment and talk about what you're working on and the tool that you're creating. And I heard another interview with you where you spoke about how you're really trying to systematize responsible AI. Can you go into what exactly that means and how you're going about that?
Yeah, really, what we are trying to do. One of my visions or sort of dreams is that we could use technology and this kind of systematic methodology so that we can provide top-notch or very good responsible AI capability for any size of company or an organization anywhere in the world. We know that not all organizations have those resources to hire AI ethics experts or AI ethics focused lawyers or so forth, researchers in this area. So how do we support all those organizations who don't have that expertise within their organization? And that's an interesting challenge that we are trying to think of, and there this systematic methodology. So what are the things that are part of this good governance? It means, for example, that always you should know who is accountable for the system. You need to have a process where you agree accountabilities. Who owns these systems? Who is the technical owner? And so forth, and associate responsibilities related to that role. It's about documentation as well, so that we have a systematic way of always documenting the data that we are feeding into the system. How do we document the methodology, the model that we're building on that data, using that data, and so forth? What are the systematic testing methodologies that we use in these kind of systems, and how do we document that one. So sort of it's sort of slicing this whole process of an area of AI governance into these pieces, and then having that platform which basically guides you through, notifies you that, okay, these are the areas that you need to do in that governance process, and then it's a place for doing that technical documentation where you can have that record of everything that has been done in that governance and documentation process. So yeah, sort of methodology combined with technical documentation as an evidence of the work that has been done around the governance.
So, how are you deciding what is important to document? Or is it the teams that are deciding themselves and they're
Mm.
documenting it? Or are you
Mm.
nudging them in certain ways?
Yeah, yeah. This is really, really something where we absolutely want to bring value for customers. The idea that everyone should somehow build that knowledge what is important in AI governance is a big expectations for any organization. So we've been working on that for 3 years, so almost 3 years now, basically building on research in this area. So what is research saying? Like, what do we need to take care of when doing good governance or risk assessment, analysis, and so forth. Then we have a lot of important policy papers and like what is coming from the policy and regulation side. So, for example, the new EU proposal is setting a lot of expectations in this area. I believe that is already influencing as a sort of standard what good looks like from that perspective and so forth. So there's a lot of background work, and obviously while working with different customers on this area, we always learn something new that, okay, this is something that we haven't really thought about. And this seems to be something that actually applies not only this specific situation, but it's more generic. So, okay, let's think about um, how should we document the computing resources used in this project or something else. And then so we are basically updating the metadata model, which guides what is important, what is all the documentation that we need to have in place all the time while we are learning with our customers. And that's really something that I believe is the benefit of working in this kind of community together, that through platform we are able to provide the learnings from the community to all customers. So that's really where it materializes in the metadata model that has been developed, building on these different sources, and then what continues to evolve. Also, obviously, we want to keep it in line with the major regulations that are coming into space, and make sure that while aligning with our approach and metadata model that is guiding these things on the platform, our customers also are meeting the expectations from of coming regulations.
So, right now, in my mind, like the AI world and the machine learning space is very much like the wild, wild west. And there's not much of this consolidation or deciding on one way of doing things. There's a million different ways of doing things. And what it seems to me like you're helping is creating that standardization and
Mm,
really making sure that there's the standardizing around different practices and best practices, if you will. And like you
yeah.
mentioned, there's laws and there's regulation that are coming into play that are helping guide that standardization.
Mm,
And my question is, when you're looking at something that is not included in those laws, how are you deciding what to standardize upon and what needs to be inside of that? And then also, since there are so many different ways of saying the same thing, and maybe it's just a little bit of a tweak of a word, or it's a tweak of the actual process. How are you capturing all of that inside of it too?
Yeah. One important is that we really work with experts on that one. So as I mentioned, our customers are obviously like hands-on experts on, like, they are taking it into use, and they are like source of continuous learning for us. So we really respect those learnings that our customers do while using our systems, and while trying to use that for good governance and having their own interests to, like, actually do it in a good way. So that's a key thing. But another really important is that we really socialize around our metadata model a lot with experts of AI ethics and AI governance. So that's really important. Working with researchers on this area, always sort of, if I need to work on some area, or like some domain of applications where we want to start using this system, so I really make sure that we know people who are deep experts in this area. For example, privacy, or if we start to work in the people analytics space, we make sure that we know people who are really experts in people analytics related ethics, and then ask for their feedback. So it's a process of obviously relying on those really influential researches and policy papers and so forth, standards that gives the ground. But then it's about integrating the opinions of experts and what we learn by doing it in practice. So yeah, so far it has worked pretty well, and typically when a new expert looks into what is there, they typically find everything that or almost everything that they are looking for when thinking of okay, governance and good transparency. So what are the things that we need to be considered over there? And if we hear something that isn't there yet, that someone raises up, that's always very interesting, and we want to explore that. While talking about this, I really want to also make sure that we look at it from this perspective, that it's not the collection of all possible questions that in the world can be asked about this one. We all the time need to also prioritize what needs to be there. So what we try to avoid is that we have an overwhelming large set of documentation requirements or checklists that no one can basically ever fulfill, or it's overwhelming already by looking into that. So this kind of usability and perspective, that how to keep it feasible in a practical real world lives, that's also very important. And for that, we really get good experience by actually looking into how the platform is used by our customers. Because if there is something that our customers are, feel that this is not adding very much value, they don't use it. So that's always a sign that we need to look into this. Well, is this really important, or is it somehow presented in a way that is not feasible, or works not well in a real life context?
So, how much pushback have you gotten from engineers who do not want to fill out the documentation? Because if there's one thing that I know about engineers in this space, is they tend to like to write scripts and be a little bit more lazy about things. Have you encountered any of that where this is like raining on their parade, like we were talking about before?
Well, yes and no. Obviously, no one likes really documentation, or that. That's not on the top of the top of the list. And that, by the way, is something that keeps us. We really want to make it user friendly, and I believe that a lot can be done by designing system, the platform, in a way that it's nice to use. So that's a source of inspiration for us also, that how to make it something that through usability, UX design, you can do something about making boring things more interesting. But then another important thing, which is definitely not ready, or I don't have a clear one good best practice. But what I've noticed is that sort of defining responsibilities within the teams, who are the ones who has this responsibility over documentation and governance in the organization. That's a key question, and that is something that our customers are all the time exploring and trying to find sort of good solution to that who are the ones who actually should be doing this documentation, who are the ones who should be then consulted when we have something and we want to sort of brainstorm together a little bit wider, for example, the risk management related things and so forth. So, but the question, who are the ones who will do this governance and will do the documentation, it's not, there is no straightforward answer to that. And I personally believe that there will be new roles in organization for this specifically. What is my experience, that those organizations who have clearly defined that, okay, these are the people who have the main responsibility over keeping this portfolio together from a governance perspective, to who are the key users of their AI registers. They are succeeding quite nicely in this. It works really well, because then it's clear that, okay, we have that role, and then we invite people to work on different topics and on specific systems uh, based on their expected contribution. So, but then if you are not clear on the roles and responsibilities related to these new tasks, then it might be messy.
What are the profiles of the people that you've seen doing that job? And by the way, I love the fact that getting clear on who is the owner of this and whose responsibility it is. I think that's so important, because I can't tell you how many times I've heard someone in the MLOps community that I run talk about how they deployed a model, or the data scientist pushed a model, it got deployed, but then there's no culture around who owns that model and the day two
Yeah,
of the model once it's out there. And so, like you were talking about, like having someone that is obviously the one in charge, that is going to assume all responsibility for the machine learning project or the models that they're putting out on whatever it is, then that makes things so much more clear, and you have such a better way of looking at things. So
yeah.
when you're talking about this, I know it was a little bit of a tangent, but when you're talking about the different people that are coming up that are going to help the documentation process, and you think there's going to be new roles that are forming, what kind of people are you seeing do well and excel in these new roles?
I'm not sure if I have enough still, volume and experience from a volume perspective, all kinds of different backgrounds. But I think the most important is that these are the folks who see that this is important, and they have a personal mission about putting in place this responsible AI related operations work in their organization. So and luckily I've found always those persons in the organization. So for them it's really motivating to think about what kind of good ways and how do we connect these things in the everyday life of our data science teams, and they really see the influence of their organization through technology, and are excited about the opportunity to explore those risks. So I think it's most importantly about finding those individuals who want to develop new kinds of so say it also as a personal learning opportunity to become expert in this kind of a new area, and take that role in finding good ways of operationalizing it in your own organization. But I really want to sort of echo that what you said regarding the importance of those owners or role accountabilities in individual AI project. That was actually probably the first, maybe after sort of purpose related description, but thinking about our metadata model, the accountability section where we define the service owner, the technical owner. In some industries, there are some specific roles, like for example, in media industry, you typically need to have the journalistic owner also, besides of these other roles, and so forth. So the idea that okay, we need to find those people, we need to assign this responsibility, ownership of this individual project. That was one of the one of the really key things that we wanted to use our platform to support the establishment of that idea, and that has worked quite nicely. Typically, people do what they are assigned to do and what their roles are expected. So a small thing that can actually have a major influence in governance.
Yeah, it's so important. And anyone who's ever worked with data scientists will know how important it is. And if
Mm,
you've worked on data
yeah,
products in general, I think
yeah,
because it is such a new field, it's not so clear and there aren't the common steps that have been done millions of times by every other company, and you don't get engineers who have done it one way at a past job and it really worked well, so they bring in this new culture. And this is a lot of the idea around the cultural changes that need to be made when you're putting data products into production. And
mm,
so I'm wondering also about the different demand you've seen or the different uptick or uptake you've seen when there are varying sectors involved. Like with, I think that I read you have a background in finance, and I feel like finance
mm,
is very much on the forefront of machine learning right now. And I'm wondering, and I also know they're highly regulated. So do you find
mm.
that finance is more inclined to do something like this rather than
Yeah,
healthcare or in other sectors, autonomous driving, for
yeah,
example?
yeah. I totally. I think it, it creates like basically that's about the corporate culture that has been built over the years based on the industry where you are, whether you are in a regulated industry or or a totally non-regulated industry. That absolutely changes the way how the company operates. I think in the financial sector there are so many established existing ways of working that are very close to what we are bringing here to other industries as well. I think many financial services organizations already have some kind of registers of their models, at least in the sort of regulated area. So in these kind of industries, it's relatively straightforward to then just expand those ways of workings into the areas that haven't necessarily been under that regulation driven operations or ways of workings. But really, then it's a totally different question in industries where you don't have any of those existing mechanism. It
Mm.
might be that risk management is a totally new concept or idea. Something might have been introduced as part of privacy GDPR related work or privacy regulation related work, but in many organizations still even that deployment of those intentions are ongoing as we speak. So yeah, it depends a lot on the industry and the organizational cultures related to these themes, how easy or how difficult it is to establish these ways of workings.
So I know we're wrapping up now, and I have got just one more question for you. Hopefully, you don't have. Do you have a hard stop right now?
No,
Okay,
no.
so we have a few more minutes. If you are kind enough, I'll keep you 5 minutes over, and we can talk about this really cool website that you've done, or you've helped different cities do. And I thought this was fascinating because when I saw it, it was one of those moments that it was like a eureka moment. Like, why doesn't every city have this? Why doesn't every government institution have this? And so maybe you can talk us through what exactly you did and what I'm talking about, what I'm insinuating at.
Maybe we should do a campaign so that people could send these messages for their city governments
Yes.
that, okay, can we have this AI register as well?
Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah. So yeah, Amsterdam and Helsinki, we're really proud of having the opportunity to work with these leading cities who sort of raise the bar in AI transparency on a different level. So yeah, the sites are open public websites. They are called AI or algorithm registers. The concept is really simple. People who are interested about where AI algorithms are used in by the city government, city organization, or any government organization who deploys this kind of AI register has that one place where there is basically a catalog of those systems that are currently in use or then in development. And what is visible there is information related to what is starting from the name of the system, what is the purpose, the targets of the system, how does it work on a and how is it used, and then you have coming from that metadata model that we have discussed over here, that gives the structure, like for all the technical information and governance information, you have a possibility to dive a little bit deeper into what data has been used in this system, what is the model architecture, what are the risks related to it, and so forth. So following the same structure of information, you get visibility, documentation around how the system works and how it has been governed. So the website is in the website we have brought the information that via testing process with the citizens or like users of this information we have found meaningful for different audiences there. All the information is coming from the AI register on the platform that we are running, where our customers are then basically developing and maintaining all that technical documentation that they are internally using for that governance. So via APIs, the information is brought then to wider public to that extent that is relevant for wide public. So the information can be more comprehensive on the back end. For example, all the deal days related to these accountabilities, the different roles, is not something that is brought to the public website at all the depth that is needed for the internal uses. But anyways, the idea is now that information that is relevant for the citizens, for journalists, for civil society activists, or whoever is interested about how AI is used over there, is provided there. And one more addition, it's not meant to be only one directional sort of broadcasting information. It's also a channel for future sort of stakeholder engagement. So at the moment, if you go to algorithmregister.amsterdam.nl, you also can provide feedback for any of those systems that you find from there. You can press those buttons to indicate us whether the information has been useful and then provide free text feedback. So I really hope that in future these public registers will be used also in getting much wider, diverse feedback on even idea level concepts on how we are planning to use AI in the city, and really start that conversation with the people impacted.
Well, this is such a great manifestation of a transparent system. In my mind, when I saw this, it was very clear the upside that this is going to have because, like you were talking about, this is in effect, this is trustworthy AI because we are able to see what is being used, how it's being used. If we want to dig in deeper and get really technical, it's there. Nothing is hidden behind a curtain. And I really love that because you're able to go as deep as you are capable of. And so I really think that is just an incredible initiative. And I thank you for doing that. Hopefully, and like you said, all of the different cities and towns or whatever, whoever is deploying AI in the government can come out and say, this is how we're using it, because I think that will foster a much more open way of doing AI. And like you said, this is trustworthiness in action right here. This really fosters that kind of trust. And I think that is so important as we're moving forward. Last question for you. Meeri, are you a robot?
Oh my God. What is this question? No, I hope not. Sometimes when I work really late, I almost feel like a robot, but yeah, I guess not.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on here and thank you for doing the incredible work that you're doing. I really had a pleasure talking with you. It's been incredible to hear about all of the different ways that you're looking at this and how you're implementing them. So, thanks again. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.